flesh and steel are one, drying in the color of the evening sun. Tomorrow's rain will wash the stains away, but something in our minds will always stay. Perhaps this final act was meant to clench a lifetime's argument, but nothing comes from violence, and nothing ever could. For all those born beneath an angry sun, lest we forget how fragile we are. On and on, the rain will fall like tears from a star, like tears from a star. On and on, the rain will say how fragile we are, how fragile we are. The rain will fall like tears from a star, like tears from a star. On and on, the rain will say how fragile we are, how fragile we are, how fragile we are, how fragile we are.
Hello, good evening, good evening, everybody. Corruption, yeah, my fears of you not being connected, well, they happen to be true because the StreamYard is saying device is not connected. So if you may disconnect and reconnect, I don't know what's happening because right before the show I was able to talk to you normally. But right now it's saying your devices are not connected, corruption. So, yeah, anyways, thank you for being on, guys. Thank you for listening. While we wait on corruption to fix his mic problem, his device problem, well, yeah, the show is obviously about this amazing fight that we had this past weekend, and we were not able, well, you know us, you know how we do it, we were not really able to cover it on time, to cover it the last Sunday, but so we're here tonight. It's midnight past 30 here in Europe for corruption as well as for myself. um, Let me just change the thumbnail. All right. Corruption, good evening.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Excellent. Apologies all. The only thing I was going to say was the only thing fragile at the moment, apart from StreamYard connectivity, is patience and temper with some of these intros not being given the justice they deserve. I think once this stream is over, I may have to call an emergency session of the board and have a meeting on official status as the chief executive officer. We may have to revise his position to a non-executive director.
Admit.
As the chairman of the board, we expect impeccable standards.
I have nothing to say in my defense. Guilty.
Official should be improving telecommunications, but half the time he's more interested in pursuing and conquering all of the lovely Parisian pussy delights. All of his tour de pussy escapades. Now, I've got no problem with that. You know, I've got more kids than Evander Holyfield, so I don't have an issue with that.
But yeah, that's how it is.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Welcome, everybody. So a little bit of a belated show, but that's down to me, unfortunately. Very, very busy schedules, but I know official scorecard has been chomping at the bits. Very busy, doing a great deal of work. A little bit of our forensic analysis that we'd like to do to support what was a magnificent fight. But he's been waiting, and unfortunately I've been extremely busy, so the show is a little bit late. We would have liked to have done an immediate post-fight. So during the interim, the official's been taking out his frustration on the Fag 4, so I had to tame him a little bit, and here we are. Corruption and official back. So, well, that's good. We've had three very recent videos in quick succession, so starting to get a little bit better as the schedule is starting to improve for everyone, getting out of lockdown, so getting back to a proper routine. So hopefully we can reconvene all of the shows back on the Sunday evening. I think it's a pretty good time for official and myself. So yeah, this past Saturday night, early hours of the Sunday morning for us in Europe, we had what was the most anticipated fight for the past 8 years, whether it's a rematch or a standalone fight, a fight that we prognosticated would be not only the fight of the year, but one of the best fights in recent memory. And that definitely did not disappoint. And why would it? Why would anybody have been skeptical about what the two respective combatants would have brought into the ring, given their history, given the way they've been sort of mirroring each other's careers to a certain extent through weight categories, fighting common opponents, hence the true four kings, as they are with Carlos Cuadras and Sarisakat, given a number of wars that they've had in between each other and some of the great fights and controversies, etc. But it's been a fantastic spectacle for boxing fans, and it's certainly elevated the ranks of the super flyweight division to new sort of stratospheres, and that's great. You know, poorly deprived, poorly overlooked for a number of years, and it's getting its shine, and the fighters are being financially rewarded as well. Although you can't really placate Roman Gonzalez with £1 million if you're going to try and rob him on the cards, but we'll get into that. A brilliant fight, a fight that eventually went onto the scorecards as, official and myself had kind of prognosticated once again. It was one of those fights where we were fluctuating in terms of who would be the winner. Initially, I was going for Roman, then I thought Estrada would perhaps get it on the cards, and then in the end, it was one of those fights where at the back of my mind was what happened, and when DAZN no longer becomes an independent, unbiased broadcaster, and they cross those lines and they make an official pick, so to speak, in the way they protected Juan Francisco Estrada to make sure that he progressed from so-called the semi-final or the warm-up or the tune-up fight against Carlos Cuadras. When they cross those that sort of perimeter, then what transpired in this fight is it shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody. Although opinions have been a little bit to the extreme in terms of who people felt was the victor in the fight. Seems to be that a large majority of the boxing public felt that Roman Gonzalez did enough to prevail and should have been the victor, and hence become a unified champion for the first time in his career, and then hence cement his legacy as simply one of the greatest fighters of all time. It's taken a few days to kind of reflect. I mean, I still haven't been able to see the fight for the second time, but I have a decent enough, a vivid imagination, and I can sort of recall the action. A fight of that sort of magnitude and that sort of quality, just unadulterated quality, sort of unequivocal quality, that's manifests itself in your psyche. For me, it wasn't a very difficult fight to score, although I felt that the defense of both fighters was one of the most significant qualities that I deduced from the fight. Both of them are offensive juggernauts, but Gonzalez has remodeled and he's transitioned into a defensively better fighter over the years. So he's kind of compensated for maybe a little bit of lack of explosiveness and speed. Maybe his punching power isn't as debilitating as it was at minimum weight and certainly at junior flyweight. But 41 knockouts in 52 fights is an outstanding knockout percentage in any of the 17 weight classes. So Estrada knew he had to be respectful of his power, as Gonzalez has kind of been a fighter who, certainly for prime fighters, he's able to break them down, impose a vicious beatdown, magnificent conditioning, and the way he paces himself is not always punching like an Israel Madrimov who's just loading up with too many punches. Roman understands how to manage his energy throughout the fight if it's going to go a full 12 rounds. And we see that in this fight in particular, Roman's proclivity was timing and placement, not wasting punches, although he was frying a tremendous amount of punches. But he just had the better accuracy. He had the better timing. And I felt at times he was counter-punching beautifully. He was able to... Estrada would be looking for that double left hook, sometimes left hook to the body, but Roman would always come back with a very nice right hand. Sometimes he'd loop the right hand, sometimes straight, and that punch would cause Estrada problems throughout the fight. Nothing concussive, but it certainly buzzed him up a little bit once or twice, and definitely in the later stretches of the fight. Estrada definitely came out quickly. He definitely had a purpose, as we knew he would. He actually started the first fight very well as well. So it's kind of ironic that the two fights with Gonzalez is when he's actually really come out of the gates fast. But other times he's kind of criticized for being a very notorious slow starter. Counter punchers tend to do a lot of reconnaissance early on, and they kind of figure out their opponents, and then they step into a gear and then start breaking them down and knocking them out, which Estrada, tends to do. One of those fighters that, if this was still a 15-round era, he would embrace it, and I think he would definitely shine. And I feel Roman Gonzalez could do the same. So Estrada had some good success early on. Definitely had the speed, although his hand speed wasn't as pronounced as the first fight, for the reasons I talked about in the weigh-in extended breakdown, mentioning that his emphasis now is actually more sitting down on his punches, so the hand speed is not as, or the discrepancy between Estrada and Gonzalez wasn't as acute as it was in the first fight. Also, Estrada was 8 years younger, 22-year-old, very fresh, so he definitely had far better hand speed back then. Roman's hand speed, whether it's decreased from the first fight, not that obvious. There were definitely a little bit, but as I mentioned, he now makes a conscious decision of taking power off his punches to actually increase his hand speed, but he tends not to do that all of the time. Very, very cunning and deceiving in the way he will manipulate within the pocket. When he wants to accelerate that hand speed, that's when he'll take the power off. He'll fire up a little combination, especially when Estrada was trying to target Roman's body during the middle stages. Roman then would come back with short hooks, and I noticed he was taking the power off, but he was trying to land the punches. But Estrada's defense in this fight was significantly better than it has been in a very long time. I've been highly critical of his defense. He's been relying a little bit more on his natural technical ability, his counterpunching, his cerebral sort of aspects, and his punching power as well. Almost one of those fighters that'll just stand and trade with you. But Estrada in this fight, and you've got to give it to him, there wasn't that sort of egotistical nature that I'm just going to go in there and knock him out. He may have been a little bit brash, but he definitely studied Gonzalez, well prepared, and his defense was better. He not only his guard, because he was actually blocking a hell of a lot of Roman's punches off his gloves, but movement, side to side movement, a little bit, sometimes using the shoulder roll very well, sometimes head movement. So he showed great dynamic ability in his defense as well. And I think Roman's defense was also excellent as well. So the two of them may have combined for over 2,000 punches, but I rarely go on CompuBox. We tend to compile our own punch stats, but one can gauge roughly how many punches were thrown. But I think, from my own observations, I think both of them probably landed around the sort of 150 punches, like clean punches. I don't think there was a massive discrepancy in punches landed between the two of them. Roman, I think, may have landed more punches, but Estrada was landing hard punches as well, but he didn't invest. I felt he didn't invest in the body from the outset. From the third, fourth round, he was starting to land some very good body shots. And I think in the fifth and the sixth, where he temporarily buzzed Roman with some hard left hooks to the body, that was a wise strategy, but he really should have started to Roman's body from the outset. And I think that would have slowed Roman down significantly, especially for a fighter you feel is carrying a little bit extra, maybe a little bit extra water weight. Depends if there was any if there was any natural sugars or carbohydrates, sugar tends to retain more water than salt. So it would have been a good area for Estrada to have targeted from the outset. So, given that Roman is also a veteran, so the punches would have caused Roman maybe just to have slowed down a little bit more. In Estrada, being 3 years fresher, could have stepped it up, but it's not always easy to hit Roman to the body. His defensive position, he goes to the cross guard as well, very well from not only a peekaboo, but then he tends to bend his back, tuck his chin as well, and go from a slightly lower with his elbows almost at a 90 degrees. So there's just so many guard positions that we're going to have to do a video in the future just to show how Roman transitions into all of the various guards to kind of deflect and parry and block different punches. There's just small arts of defensive skill that he truly is one of the best at. But Estrada was landing the fair share. Now, if both fighters are opening up and they're exchanging and they're trading, or they're trying to induce the other person to actually open up and exchange, then naturally you're going to be susceptible to both punches and counter punches. And Estrada definitely found some openings when they were both opening up, but Roman was having the better success at short range, as we intimated numerous times in all of our pre-fight videos. Estrada's best strategy would not be to engage for prolonged periods with Roman at sort of shorter range. Roman is the far more accomplished fighter, and I think he proved it at certain elements when they were trading. But Estrada was trying to dictate. Times he had Roman pushed back, trying to be the ring general. We didn't see Roman on the back foot in the first fight, but Estrada is physically, it definitely is the bigger fighter. You can see that. Definitely has power as well, but Roman wasn't in any sort of distress. He can fight on the back foot, although he's not as good as Estrada on the back foot, but he's a very good counter puncher, and he's very good at shortening his punches and landing one or two, sometimes one hard punch, and that would push Estrada back. So Roman's power was definitely decent throughout the fight. Estrada would not trade for prolonged periods because he knew Roman had the accuracy and he had, the power and the right, Roman's right hand, and sometimes his jab from the fourth round onwards was on point. But Estrada stood in there, took a bit of punishment in the middle rounds, came back, and then later on, Roman from round 7, 8 definitely had his second win. We could see when Estrada may have reeled off 6, 7, 8. Roman came back 9, 10, 11, 12. Definitely finished the fight stronger. So it kind of questions Estrada's, was his aggression as effective if Roman was able to mount a significant sort of retaliation at the back end of the fight. If Estrada's punches had definitely hurt Roman significantly, then I don't think as a 33-year-old super flyweight, in his 53rd fight, Roman would have been able to rebound in the manner he did. But the desire and the ambition and the heart and the fighting pride and the abilities of these fighters it's a lost art in boxing. These are some fighters that we may never see ever again, the way boxing has just become almost a novelty niche sport that is no longer an art form to showcase your talents. It's just a means of commerce and economics. Fighters no longer have the desire and the ambition to fight in different jurisdictions and to take on challenges with their antagonists or their protagonists. No more. It's just delay and avoidance, and different networks and pay-per-views, and it's very, very frustrating. So this was kind of it was a blessing just to see two warriors almost at the end of the day put on an absolutely magnificent fight. But once again, as per the first fight, I think, and here's the problem: when you have a scorecard in which it's a maturity decision, one card goes to Gonzalez, 2 to Estrada, but we all know that one of the cards, Carlos Sucre from Venezuela, had somehow adjudicated the fight to be 9 rounds to 3 when there's been no knockdowns, when there's been no fighter's been significantly hurt. Maybe Roman hurt Estrada a little bit more. Certainly in the 12th round, it was visible for to see as Estrada was hurt and Roman was able to put on a bit of a beatdown on Estrada without the same number of punches coming back. So maybe that was the most clear and decisive round of the fight. So it's kind of it's kind of hard to accept that a judge would have scored the 12th round in favor of one Francisco Estrada. But when DAZN have, as I mentioned before, when DAZN have clearly made their choice on who they see the upside with, who they see the long-term future with, whether it was the Swissacat fight, there's sufficient demand for the third fight given that it's a rubber match. When DAZN have perverted, they've overstepped their boundaries, they've not remained impartial, they've made a choice, then what has transpired in this fight is it's hard to accept that it's down to incompetence, especially when a judge awards the last 5 rounds to Estrada when Roman may have won the last 4 out of the 5 rounds. So that's very hard to not only fathom, but it's very hard to even accept or even understand. And it doesn't matter that the WBA have intervened and they've suspended the judge. That what does that exactly mean? Are they going to investigate him? Are they going to look at a source of wealth and source of funds, as I've been arguing in boxing for a number of years? That just like in the finance industry, certainly for front office traders, etc., if traders have any debts, then they're not allowed to trade. You can't have contact between the front office and back office. There's Chinese walls in place. And human resources or you're able to scrutinize the finance of the traders just to ensure that there is no bribery and corruption going involved, and that's got to be extended in boxing. But it's not going to happen because they know what exactly they're going to find. There's absolutely no doubt about it that the judges are working on the behest of not only the promoters but on the television networks. That's, you've only got to look at their previous records and look at the decisions and break it down. Look at the microeconomics and go down and look at the scoring of individual rounds, and you'll see so many anomalies that it no longer puts into doubt their ability as judges. It's pawns brought in to adjudicate so that whoever the promoter has decided that he wants to prevails and moves on. Now, I don't think it was a wide fight for Gonzalez. When I was scoring the fight live and with official, he will concur that before the judge's scorecard was read, I had scored the fight 7 rounds to 5 for Gonzalez. Official and myself had differing opinions on the fight. Official will emphasize in great detail how he how he saw the fight, and he's rewatched the fight, and he's been doing a lot of tremendous analysis. So he's maybe in a far better position to give his opinion and maybe even supersede my thoughts and opinions. But I always felt it was a close fight, very competitive fight. I felt defense was one of the best components in the fight, and hence the reason why I felt it was a very close fight, because a lot of the punches were definitely being blocked and parried and rolled. But there was also, it was not convoluted to try and isolate the clean punches that were landed. For me, both fighters were landing, clean punches, but I think Roman Gonzalez, by virtue of what he did early on and in the latter stages of the fight, I felt he did enough to win the fight. 7 rounds to 5. I think 6-6 would be the maximum you could give Estrada. I think Roman definitely won the fight. 7-5 either way, that would be a little bit difficult to accept as well. But I think, it's got to be balanced with the first fight, and I felt Juan Francisco Estrada in the first fight was very competitive. I felt he gave a magnificent performance, and a lot of people felt that Roman Gonzalez was a wide, deserved, unanimous victor in the first fight. The more and more I've seen this fight, I have a different opinion. I think Estrada was very, very decent in the first fight, and that, for me, could have been a draw. So 2 very, very close fights. And I think Roman in the post fight, you could see the emotion, but I think deep down in his heart, he felt that he didn't receive justice. He explicitly mentioned that, he had clearly won both fights, overshadowed by his humbleness, which he shows throughout. So Eddie Hearn, you can't placate Roman Gonzalez with $1 million, is because that's what he deserves, and he's deserved that for the past decade. You've only got to look at the quality of the fight and what Roman has done throughout his career. Now, Estrada may have been a little bit disparaging in saying that Roman was a little bit reticent to have stepped in the ring with him far quicker, because he was always demanding $1 million. But no, I don't share that opinion at all. Now, what do you think Roman Gonzalez is going to do with $1 million? I mean, do you really think he's going to buy a fleet of luxury cars, or do you think Roman Gonzalez is going to buy a whole jewelry shop with a jewelry, pack it into a Louis Vuitton bag, go into a nightclub and get it stolen like Jamal Charlo? He's not that sort of individual. You've only got to look at Nicaragua and what has happened to the country, certainly via the United States, via the structural reform that has taken place over there, and the way the Nicaraguan economy is no longer able to reflate their economy before even the peg to the US dollar. So you've got to look at the economic genocide that has been inflicted upon that economy. Roman will definitely use that money to try and help his local community. He's been doing that throughout his career. So when the fighter is talking about demanding a purse that may seem a little bit exorbitantly high, you've really got to understand the reasons why he's requesting it. He's a warrior. He's one of the greatest fighters of all time. He's got full justification to be commanding a salary of that sort of magnitude. Look at his achievements. Look at how he's won his fights, the dominating way he's won them. Look at the entertainment he's brought to the entire boxing infrastructure. You only got to look at the undercard. You've got you've got a fighter who has adopted the name, Little Chocolito in Hiroto Kiyoguchi. That is the reverence and the admiration that these younger fighters have on Roman Gonzalez. How he's inspiring so many fighters, not only from Japan but in Central South America, as well as the UK, etc. A lot of people are adopting his style, his technique. They speak about him in such, with such respect and admiration. That's the personification of Roman Gonzalez to boxing. They've introduced Superfly cards after what he's done and what he's brought to the United States in elevating the division. Otherwise, would we ever have seen super flyweights headline cards or have a complete card directed to super flyweights? So I'm supposed to accept, disparaging and just sort of nonsensical talk that a fighter in Gonzalez doesn't deserve, $1 million, when you've got Avni Yildirim, who just came down and did absolutely nothing because it was a 100% fixed fight on the DAZN card. A Canelo sparring partner who no doubt puts up tremendous resistance in sparring, as we've seen footages, but in the ring, that was just compensation for an old friend from Canelo Alvarez doing him a favor. Hence why he did absolutely nothing when he clearly had the ability to do so. And we've seen that in all of Canelo. And we've seen DAZN pay astronomical amounts to Mikey Garcia, a mercenary who left Bob Arum because he didn't want the hard fights, just like Floyd Mayweather using James Prince to buy his contract out with Top Rank. And look at the fights he fought just after he left Top Rank as well. But we give these people all the respect in the world. But Roman Gonzalez is greedy and he's pricing himself out, and he didn't want the rematch. That's what we're supposed to accept. It's just ludicrous, absolutely ludicrous, listening to all these toxic, neolithically incompetent prats that just spend their time as leeches and parasites, and all these ridiculous boxing channels that really should be blown out of existence. That's the level of stupidity that's on. And not only there, it extends to the so-called publications, etc. How Roman Gonzalez is not even on the Ring Magazine pound-for-pound top 10 rankings. When you've got people like Terence Crawford and Errol Spence, even higher than people like Alexander Usyk. That's what these youngsters, these boxing fans, that's what they proliferate these days. It's these people are just so easy to hypnotize with stupidity, and that's what they proliferate throughout the internet when they come to respected boxing channels who know what they're talking about, are able to break down the fighters, and these are the counter arguments that they try and bring. It's kind of disheartening, very frustrating, and it's annoying, and hence, it kind of gets reflected in these podcasts. We don't want to do that. We want to be positive after a fight like that, but you've got to put in the demarcation, and you've got to call it that as it is. But yeah, that was my thoughts, and I'm going to pass over to the soon-to-be appointed non-executive director, official scorecard for his extended breakdown.
Yeah. Despite the great wins, Yoka barely gets the 10th, but when Sol steps to you with his feet of cement after 2 abuses by an old elder without consent, he puts you all in line and tells you to get banned. Beat blown up Mikey, Little Danny, Khan's corpse, and all the others in whom you can stick a fork. They'll put you over Choco without remorse, or about Loma for that matter, and it gets even worse.
Bravo. official.
Uh,
He's like a cross between William Shakespeare and Cool Keith.
I'm taking that. Thank you. Man, fuck that bullshit, man. Yeah, you're 100% right, man. Couldn't tell it any better, man. Every single word you just said. It's amazing. I mean, before jumping into this fight, yeah, let me just address one of your last points. Yeah, so I'm certain some people are going to say, yeah, but are you not always saying that fighters are getting paid based on their worth? And why do you talking bad about the female boxing, especially me? I know they would say that about me because I'm the one saying all that shit. Well, look, you cannot compare because you have 50 females in a middleweight division fighting. I mean, they can only dream of fighting at the level, and not only the females, all the all your top 10 pound for pound boxers can only dream of boxing at the level that Chocolatito and El Gallo are boxing at. So Chocolatito, first of all, he's been putting asses in the seats, and not only in Nicaragua, in his home country, but all over the world. He's been immensely respected in Japan, where, I mean, Japanese appreciate him immensely for because they're recognizing his talent. And not only that, when he came over to HBO and started fighting in the US, and keep in mind, this was after his prime, he was already slightly on a decline, plus moving up in weight couldn't help him neither. But he was still able to give us all the classic fights, and he was putting seats in LA, in New York. He, I mean, he brought the interest in the super flyweights, in the little guys, and gave us so many classic fights. This one included for sure. So yeah, you cannot say he doesn't deserve that money. And corruption, you already explained everything so eloquently. So props to you for all for everything you just said. But now about this fight, a fucking fantastic fight. Yeah, I've heard so many people saying that, oh, don't get it blown out of proportion. Like, yeah, it was a good fight, but don't say it was an amazing fight. No, to me, it was an amazing fight. I really enjoyed it, and no matter how great the first fight between them two was, I enjoyed this one even more so. And who could believe it, man? Both of them, you can say, I mean, yeah, they should be out of their primes, but the amazing defense that they showcased, as well as the offense, because just look at how many punches they've thrown. It was a non-stop action. So a fucking amazing fight. I really enjoyed it. I mean, we can do a 20 show series on this fight alone, analyzing this fight, and we still would not be able to cover all the things that happened in the fight. This is how amazing it was. Oh, I just wish I could see these type of fights more often, but unfortunately, I don't think it's possible, and certainly not with a very tiny amount of throwback fighters like Roman who are able to give us this kind of performance. And Estrada as well, a fucking great fighter. But at the same time, yeah, I have to speak about corruption because it's funny to me that people are saying, "Oh yeah, doesn't matter," look this fight from the positive perspective. We are all going to remember this fight forever. But if you give a promoter, I mean, or whoever is fixing the fight, you know, a carte blanche to do the same thing, they are going to continue doing it. Same for fighters who are attacking the other fighters, their opponents. As long as you people are allowing them to do so and you're not criticizing them, they're going to continue doing so. So same goes for fixing fights. I mean, I cannot just pretend that I was so happy about this fight. I mean, the fight was amazing, one of the best fights I've ever seen, man. Mm, But at the same time, I felt by the end of the fight, I felt somehow robbed. I don't know. It left a salty taste in my mouth, and it was not a pussy. And fuck, man, I don't know what to say. You you were so right about the zone and their piece of cake. I mean, their what? How do you say it? This fight was not televised by by a network station who doesn't have anything to do with this fight. No, this was televised by a network who signed both of them, and so they were not just a simple observer in this fight. So it's very hard. It's impossible to say that this was a honest mistake of two judges. I don't believe that. I mean, it's very debatable when it comes to scorecards. It's very debatable, and I can see it 7-5 for Roman. I can clearly see it, but 5 rounds is the absolute best I could give to Estrada. And by the way, this is not me shitting on Estrada. On the contrary, he's an incredible fighter. Um, the best current Mexican fighter, without any doubt. Way better than Canelo, than any other current active Mexican fighter, man. And he showcased amazing skills. I mean, we all talk about Roman's defense, and for great reason indeed. But man, did Estrada showcase his defense as well and his offense, because he was landing some amazing combos, and it was just so lovely to watch this fight, man. But at the same time, it felt cheap at the same time. By the time they were reading the scorecards, it's so frustrating, because and that's why we have to address this shit. Now later I'll get into my scorecard, because I was rewatching it, and in between the rounds I was writing the notes about this fight, about the rounds. I was describing the rounds in between the rounds, while I was rewatching the fight, so I can read it and explain it in detail, how and why I scored it, the way I scored it. And it was pretty much, I would say, similar to how I initially scored it watching it live. But yeah, before that, I have a couple of things to say. First of all, big credit to Estrada, because he was a standout guy. I mean, he was being told in between the ninth and the 10th round by his corner to step it up, and that he has to score a knockout in order to win, because his own corner felt like he was losing the fight.
Great
Now,
point.
of course, thanks. Of course, it's arguable. You can always make a case that it's his corner trying to motivate him to step it up, no doubt. but I don't believe that the way I do think that
Yeah, there
Estrada's
is
corners.
official.
Mhm.
There is honesty at that moment. I remember Roger Mayweather saying the same to Floyd Mayweather when he was losing the Castillo fight, telling him, "You're losing the fight." I don't think, and that's honesty. You don't give your fighters wrong instructions. Say if they're hypothetically winning on points, and you tell them go and knock them out, and you get knocked out in the process. You never do that. So I think Caballero was honest, and I feel Roger Mayweather at that time was honest to Floyd. You're losing the fight, in which he was. So yeah, carry on. Sorry.
No, no problem. Thank you. Thank you for that input, in fact, because you are so right. And not only Roger Mayweather, but Mayweather Sr. as well in the Pacquiao fight. Why are you fighting scared? By the way, just quick shout out to, well, of course, El Dog and that guy who were already here, but also Andre Rodriguez, Toby Bartlett, also who just joined us. Thank you for being on, guys. But yeah, so yeah, it was clearly the case. Roman was winning that fight at the point when Estrada's corner addressed him and urged him to step up. But yeah, by the end of the fight, you could just see on Estrada's face that he knew he lost the fight, but he was not bragging. He was not gloating. No, he was very respectful, and and on the other hand, I'm sure that he's a type of guy. He's kind of like Marquez, his favorite fighter, in fact. Marquez, who just like Estrada, um, I feel that deep down I can say kind of they hated their biggest opponents and really wanted the victories over them so bad. You can even see it in at waiting and Estrada saying that he will knock Roman out before the fight. He was so pumped up, emotional. So I could even say that there was probably in his mind some bad blood in between them, that he really wanted to, that he was really telling to himself, I want to knock this motherfucker out, fuck him. I'm gonna show him that I'm the best. But still, he was humble. He said that, well, of course, rare are the fighters who at this point and this day they could straight out say, oh, I think I didn't deserve to win, I think my opponent won. But he at least said it was a very close fight. Then he also said, I thought it was a draw, and he immediately offered Roman, I mean, he expressed um, that he would like to have a third fight in between him and Roman.
That's
So
official.
mhm.
That's a great point. Show me one other fighter who has been adjudged or to win the fight, and he at a press conference or whatever has that moment of clarity, and he kind of rescinds, desecrates the decision, downgrades the decision to say that I think my opponent did enough for a draw when you've won the fight on the cards. That very invariably happens. It's almost a rarity, and I think that was honesty once again that set in.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you look at it the other way, at the same time, put yourself in Estrada's shoes or in any other fighter's shoes of a fighter who did not deserve the victory. He can't even say, "Oh, I think I clearly lost this fight," because the same way promoters gave him the A side status and wanted him to win, was over setting his opponent to win. That way he can anger them, and big money is in question. The zone is investing in him, not as much as they're investing in Canelo and AJ, no doubt, but they're hoping on him to become the biggest name in the flyweight division, and to continue on winning. So he cannot really express that he thought that he lost the fight. Same way, I don't want to go off topic, but let me just quickly say, same way the trainers are not always going to go out in public in the interviews and say, oh, I think those bitches robbed my fighter. No, because they have other fighters as well, and their other fighters are also going to be fighting under the jurisdiction of those same commissions. So they have to protect their interest, that their other fighters, so they have to be careful. It's a funny game. That's just look at Tyson Fury in both Wilder fights. First fight, he was not really expressing that he felt he got robbed, at least not instantly. It was like weeks later. Second fight also, he thought Kenny Bayless was doing a great job, while in fact he was definitely protecting Wilder in the rematch, But yeah, you get my point. Anyways, to get back to this fight, yeah, man, that post-fight interview from Roman was so emotional, and man, what a man that guy is. The man.
Official. Yeah. In the politics and the economics in this fight, it almost makes you wonder what exactly is DAZN forecasting for the future. Because as we mentioned before, we have two fighters whose original registration rights are with third-party promoters. Tekken Promotions Japan with Roman Gonzalez, and Zanfer Promotions Mexico with Estrada. So DAZN is the international network for them, where they're fighting in the United States or
Good
in
point.
the UK, etc. And DAZN obviously have the budget, so they're making all of the super fights for the fighters, but the original promoters obviously get a certain cut, and we don't really know the intrinsic terms and conditions involved in their contracts to say what they are. But whatever it is that Zanfer and Mr. Honda are getting a cut. Now, DAZN in that sense, so you've almost got like an equilibrium between the two fighters. It's not like Estrada is an outright DAZN fighter. Like there's no ancillary contract. There's no third party agreement. He's a 100% DAZN fighter. In which case, if they put all the chips on Estrada, you could clearly understand it. But in this position, you've got both of them are not DAZN autonomous fighters. But for whatever reason, DAZN have decided with Estrada, he was signed before Roman. Roman's been on various K2 promotions, etc. So he's kind of floated with everybody, but he's remained loyal to his original. Now, I was thinking, what is going on? Is there more money in a rubber match with Srisakat than with Roman and Srisakat, which also has a great deal of intrigue because Roman was clearly robbed in the first fight, and it wasn't a close fight. That was a robbery, pure and simple. And Srisakat is not a big enough commodity in which if Roman had, if justice had been upheld in the first fight and Roman prevailed, then there would have been absolutely no demand for the second fight. So Roman would not have been knocked out. Being hypothetical, but that's just facts. There would have not been a rematch if Roman had won the first fight, even if it was a 7-5, 1 point discrepancy with the knockdown in the first round. To say 1-1, 1-1-4, 1-1-3, nobody would have wanted the rematch. But so Sarisakat has 2, Roman 0, Strado and Rangvasai 1-1 now. Rangvasai signed with a massive promoter out in Thailand, and they've been actually putting on big fights. It's quite a decent sort of card with MMA and boxing combined. Very good commentators. I watched the Iran Diaz fight, and I thought that was as a showcase entertainment, it was a magnificent sort of spectacle. I spoke on with Gail and that on the pound for pound. So there could be demand both from Thailand and Mexico and the United States for that fight. So there could be a bit of money in that return fight. But is that going to be significantly higher than what Roman and Srisaket would get from the third fight if that was to happen? Because there is still, as I mentioned, some intrigue, and Roman has a hardcore fan base, and there's a lot of casual fans who I'm sure would definitely tune in and all get a subscription with DAZN and watch the third fight. So I think he's a big enough name, bigger than Estrada, definitely as a commodity. So I don't think that the discrepancy between the two fights is such for DAZN just to make a blatant outright choice that we're picking Estrada over Gonzalez. I'm kind of thinking, are they trying to get Estrada so that they can perhaps get him in with a mega fight with a Rey Martinez, who may step up to 115 pounds? Is that what
Yes.
DAZN is looking at? Perhaps for Rey Martinez to take over the reins, given that it could be an old DAZN fight. Estrada with 2 belts. Rey, being the young guy, is expressing an interest coming up to 115 pounds, as it's the big money division. The same way in which Top Ranker may be trying to get Lomachenko and try and feed him to Shakur Stevenson if he moves down to 130 pounds, because they clearly want Loma out of the game. We know that. And maybe DAZN are thinking, well, Estrada's got 2, but Rey Martinez is probably the future. He's 25 as well. I think he's also a Zanfa DAZN. So a very similar contractual agreement with Estrada, both Mexicans, kind of a Mexican super fight. And maybe they think, Rey's the future of the division. It's just Ethereum. What are your thoughts?
Exactly, corruption. I was about to say that because I remember that Julio Cesar Martinez, he already expressed his intention of moving up to 115 the next year. So I don't know if it's gonna happen by the end of this year, because I heard him saying that a couple of months ago, or I don't remember if it was an interview or a post-fight interview, or the commentators mentioning it during one of his fights. But yeah, I clearly remember hearing that he already expressed intention of moving up in weight. And yeah, Martinez, Canelo's fighter, he's much younger than even Estrada, if you thought. So there was some difference in between the age of Gonzalez and Estrada. Well, in fact, I don't even know how old is Martinez exactly. Is he like 22, 24, something
Could be.
like that?
I'm not definitely sure, but I think he's around 25-ish.
Oh yeah, but definitely, yeah. And his style is more aggressive, more explosive. Yeah, I would say so. They're banking on it. I would definitely say so. And on top of that, we already observed all these big Western networks and promoters starting to catch up on the little guys in the flyweight, bantamweight, signing Inoue, signing Casimero, etc. So DAZN is doing the same thing, and they acquired Estrada, Martinez, Gonzalez, and a lot like we were able to see Hiroto Kyoguchi, but also many other top light flyweight guys. So yeah, were you about to say something?
Great points, but I wanted to ask you a technical question, getting
Go
down
on.
to the coup d'etat forensic analysis.
Yeah,
The way you scored the fight initially, I think you remind me how you scored the fight.
I think it was 9 rounds to 3.
Okay, now you've definitely done a lot more analysis than myself during the ensuing period from last week up until now, and you've also been undertaking a punch count analysis to try and not only elucidate how CompuBox is used very much to promote and protect the A-side fighters. We know that they've done it definitively throughout. You've only got to look at Floyd Mayweather, Andre Ward fights, Canelo fights, etc. You know, if as I keep saying, if CompuBox was a definitive and accurate scoring system, then the judges would use it, but they don't, because it's not only prone to human error, but you've got to look at who actually owns the zone, look at the employees and try and tie them into the network who is ultimately their employer. So it's just a way of hypnotizing once again. Simple as that. Nothing more,
justifying the
nothing
lottery.
less. I wouldn't pay any attention unless you're trying to look at the veracity of their stats and try and dispel or try and corroborate wherever, if you're looking at it from the A side or if you're looking at it from who the B side or the A minus is in this case. So my question to you is now, in rewatching the fight and doing your punch stat analysis, are your scorecards going to change? I know you've probably not completed your exercise throughout, but
Mhm.
what's your early thoughts on how you scored the fight, on how you're seeing it now?
Well, I can tell it's weird because there was definitely some good action, but it's not a huge amount of Estrada's work that watching it in slow motion. He kind of did a bit better than I thought, but also I still do think. Uh, I mean, personally, I would give him 4 rounds, man. I don't know, but watching it in slow motion because I watched the whole analyzing the fight, etc. Uh, I have uh, I have compiled the punches for the first 7 rounds, but I did a detail analysis on the fight. So yeah, Estrada was doing a bit better than I thought initially, but nothing to tell me that it could be a draw or perhaps him winning the fight, in my opinion. So yeah, and by the way, yeah, while I was rewatching the fight, like I told you earlier, I had some notes. Uh, writing the notes in between the rounds, like 1 or 2 lines for each and every round describing them. But what can I tell you, corruption, on the other hand, is that rewatching the fight and analyzing it, reassured my initial thoughts that all the rounds I gave to Estrada were extremely close.
Mm-hmm.
So I, I remember, was it the fifth or the sixth round, actually in scored punches. Estrada, and that was what I was telling you on Discord in between the rounds. I thought that around one of the middle rounds that I gave to Estrada, I mean, I gave him the sixth and the seventh. I scored it for Estrada, but I was telling you, man, it's still a close fight because it looks like Estrada was landing some great punches, but I felt like Chocolatito was still outlanding him. But I still gave the rounds to Estrada. But
Mm-hmm.
in the sixth or the seventh round, I actually had Chocolatito outlanding Estrada by 20 punches. But I could
Wow.
still or even more. I cannot remember 2020 something, but I could even I could still say that it could be Estrada's round. But my point is that any of the rounds that I scored for Estrada were extremely competitive, while not all the rounds that I gave to Chocolatito, but most of them were pretty much clear. And I would like to read something that I wrote before me reading you round by round description. So I wrote that Chocolatito served his purpose to the zone, and it's obvious, by the way, judging by the outcome of this fight. No discredit to Juan Francisco Estrada, who's a future Hall of Famer, a truly great fighter, and definitely the best current Mexican fighter, leaving Canelo miles behind him. Estrada, just like in many of his previous fights, showed a lot of heart, and I think that his heart is exactly what helped him win most of the rounds that he won in this fight. The scorecards are not his fault, but the trend of the promoters creating the synthetic legends or stars continued this last weekend. Not that Estrada is undeserving of being called a true legend, on the contrary. In my opinion, he definitely is one already. But that boxing tradition of an old legend being beaten and passing a torch to a younger fighter has become very synthetic and can be counterproductive when the younger fighter doesn't really deserve a victory, at least the hardcore boxing fans. It probably still serves the purpose of the promoter or the ones who are fixing the fight when it comes to the larger audience who wouldn't dispute the official decision. But as we saw in Triple G Canelo fights, as well as in many other fights, how people can even start hating on a fighter who's on the receiving end of the gift victory. Although there are many other reasons for Canelo being hated, as you can claim, his whole career is being carefully crafted by the promoters. And to be honest, despite being a very good fighter himself, Canelo is a much lesser fighter than Juan Francisco Estrada. But the point is that Estrada doesn't deserve to be hated on for the outcome of this fight. It's not his fault, and if anything else, he has proven once again that he's a fucking wonderful fighter. So it would be a shame for Estrada to be treated the same way for being given a decision he did not deserve.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, no blame is being tabulated on Juan Francisco Estrada. A magnificent fighter for me. He was well. I mean, I've spoken about him for so many years now. So yeah, no problem there whatsoever. But just before I come back, but I want to go on to a question from Mateus in the chat regarding Usyk. And Mateus, if you know anything about me and my channel and my knowledge on Alexander Usyk and the number of shows I've directed towards him, and I may have been the first person within the entire boxing community, and official can concur or dispute that, to have said right at the time that Alexander Usyk was making a mistake signing with DAZN, because Eddie Hearn's interests are not for Alexander Usyk to become the world heavyweight champion. So I was skeptical from the very start. And I've talked about all of the roadblocks that have been installed in front of Usyk, the talent he possesses, the danger he possesses for a cumbersome sort of fighter like Anthony Joshua, who only really has size on him, maybe punching power, but Usyk has faced larger heavyweights. That's not going to be the deciding factor. So and Eddie Hearn giving, Joshua dispensation to watch the fight during the lockdown when some of Usyk's own family weren't even allowed to watch the fight in London. That says that Eddie Hearn will do everything in his capacity to make sure that Joshua maintains the belts. And there was no reason for Usyk to be fighting Chaz Witherspoon, Derek Chisora, etc. If you've been upgraded to super champion status by the WBO, then the legality means you can challenge for the World Heavyweight Championship for the WBO portion when the sanctioning body calls the fight. They work on the timetable, especially if a singular champion holds multiple belts, then they have to try and coordinate some sort of timetable. But we know that is not strict. They don't adhere to any guidelines. That's precipitated by pay-per-views and money, etc. Because it's a collusion that is going on. It's not a supervisory body. These promoters are it's about revenue generating entities. That's exactly what they are. Nothing more, nothing less. So Joshua, we know, is able to command huge revenues for fights in the United Kingdom with gate receipts and pay-per-view sales in the UK. So the sanctioning fees will be a lot higher for Joshua. So clearly Eddie Hearn, his proclivity, his money, it's not identity necessarily. If Usyk would generate so much more revenues, then maybe the decision would not be as complex. But a Russian-speaking Ukrainian who's a road warrior is not really going to captivate UK audiences, even though Usyk has done everything in his capacity to come to the UK, beat Bellew, try and increase his profile. He's won multiple amateur titles in the United Kingdom. Is one of the greatest fighters of all time, and look at what he's been doing. No fighter, can sort of emulate what he's tried to do. 7 fights continuously on the road in the backyard of these fighters. So we know what Eddie Hearn is doing. Just so go back, Matthias, and review some of the previous pods as we covered this in detail. Looked at all of the permutations of what Hearn is doing and some of the shenanigans that was going on in the Chisora fight, which just underscored to me that Eddie Hearn, it's no longer covert, it's actually explicit in what he was trying to do with Usyk, because he clearly didn't want Usyk to win that fight, but Usyk was very circumspect. He's a master cerebral chess player, and he never showed. He was in cruise control. He didn't want to lay everything down because he knew Joshua was doing his reconnaissance. So, but what they're trying to do now is they're just trying to put roadblocks with a Joe Joyce fight now, which I don't like, for the reason that Usyk should be challenging for the World Heavyweight Championship, but he's not going to get that fight. And to me, I wouldn't be surprised if Eddie Hearn then forces Usyk to fight the winner out of Dillian White and Alexander Povetkin as well. Hence another roadblock. Try and wear him down. He's 33, 34. Joshua's a lot younger. Old man him, get him into a position where he's just become a little bit punch drunk, worn down, beaten up, not having the same athletic, the same hand speed, the same skills. His footwork, which is his main asset, once that begins to slow down, and then it's a kind of barometer for the rest. So it's kind of difficult to transition for some of these fighters. So that's Eddie Hearn's strategy, and that's going on in boxing now. So absolutely, yeah, Alexander Usyk getting screwed over, and corruption in boxing was articulating this from the get-go. But don't know whether you've got anything to add to that, official, or should we go back to the card?
No, wonderfully explained. I mean, We are talking about Usyk, whose style is based on his physical attributes. I mean, not only that, of course, but just like you said, his footwork, his hand speed, it plays a lot, and he's older than AJ. I mean, Eddie is doing fucking anything possible, everything possible to derail him. But yeah, I mean, I have many more things to say about this fight, so you just let me know if I know you've been busy and if you're tired, just let me know. But yeah, I'm just going to read you my description of the round by round. First round, scored it for Estrada. They landed a similar amount of punches. I'd even say Roman landed one or two of best punches in the round, but I gave it to Estrada because of the work rate and work rate aggressiveness. He may also have landed just a few more punches, but it wasn't clear to me in normal speed. I'll wait to do my punch count for for the fight this week, and I did it later, and it was 12 punches landed by Estrada and 12 by Roman. Yeah, so while I'm scoring the fight, I'm not slowing it down. I'm slowing it down to do the analysis, but while I'm trying to score a fight, I'm only always watching it in real speed. Anyways, second round, scored it for Gonzalez. Clear round. Estrada landed a couple of more punches than I thought watching it live, but Gonzalez definitely outlanded him and landed many more hard punches, while Estrada hasn't landed many significant shots, if any. Third round, Gonzalez. Fairly close round, but you could arguably call it a swing round. Both were active, although Gonzalez definitely landed the harder and cleaner punches, maybe even slightly outworked Estrada, although I'm not sure about that as Estrada was active as well. And yes, indeed, he outlanded Estrada. Fourth round, Gonzalez, dominant round. He clearly outlanded him and landed a lot more harder punches. Fifth round, Gonzalez. I wrote clear round, but it was kind of competitive, but still clear round after rewatching it and doing my punch stats. Although Estrada was landing some very good punches from time to time, Gonzalez outlanded him, plus was landing the bigger amount of hard punches in the process. He was also blocking a lot of Estrada's big punches and was making him miss a lot. Sixth round, scored it for Estrada, a swing round. Both times I felt like Gonzalez outlanded him, and I even felt Gonzalez landed the bigger amount of hard punches. Estrada, for the first time, threw and landed some explosive punches. For the first time, throwing really, really mean explosive combos. Watching it both times, I believed Gonzalez edged it out, but they scored it both times for Estrada for the fear of being called biased towards Gonzalez. Seventh round, Estrada, another swing round. Round of the year candidate. Both landed a lot of great punches. I still felt like Gonzalez was landing a bit more. Fantastic round, very tough to score. I'm giving it to Estrada for the same reason. Eighth round, Gonzalez. Dominant round. In the first half of the round, they were equal, but the last minute and a half of the round was all chocolatito. Then the ninth round, Gonzalez. A very competitive round. Not too much action in the first 2 minutes where Gonzalez was winning, but a lot of action in the last minute. I'm not sure who won it. You can give it to Estrada as both were landing, but Estrada probably landed two or three of the most eye-catching punches. 10th round, Gonzalez. Fairly competitive, yet clear round for Roman. Estrada was very active and was landing good punches himself, but got outlanded. And he got certainly outlanded in the amount of clean and hard punches. The 11th round, gave it to Gonzalez, but another close round, very competitive. And it was certainly competitive in the beginning. Then Roman took it over, but at the end they were both landing in exchanges. Estrada was landing some eye-catching blows, so was Roman, but a few Estrada's blows were more. Hold on, I wrote. But I think, yeah, I wrote, I thought that in the 11th round, maybe some of Estrada's blows were more eye-catching for the simple reason that Roman was the one landing the better blows during most of the fight. So when Estrada was finally landing his own explosive blows, they were eye-catching for that simple reason, because we were not seeing him doing that throughout the whole fight. So once he would let his hands go in an explosive manner, it would look significant. At the same time, Gonzalez was landing well-timed thudding blows. But since he doesn't have the same fast twitch muscles and explosiveness in his punches, they may have been outlooked by the viewers. Okay, no, it doesn't matter. So another close round. Yeah, so you can also debate that maybe Estrada won it, so it would make it for 5 rounds for Estrada. And the 12th round, clear Gonzalez round, amazing and explosive round where Estrada again showed a lot of heart, was throwing non-stop while being in a survival mode. And this round was another candidate for the round of the year. In fact, I think that the 6th, the 7th, and the 12th round could be candidates for the round of the year.
And in the first fight, it was the 4th, the 8th, and the 12th.
Yeah, the 4th definitely I remember now. The other round I cannot remember, but yeah.
But here's the problem, official. What is the probability of every swing round being directed to one fighter when the perception of the boxing public is that Gonzalez had the better success in the latter quarter 4 of the fight? It's just, for me, it's just incomprehensible. There's no logic, there's no scientific fact or even proof in terms of stats and action to justify that.
But you see, my point is that being that Estrada was not throwing his explosive combos throughout the whole fight, once he would do so, it was catching the viewers' attention.
Yeah, we've talked about that style over substance. Some of these guys with flashier combinations,
and the corruption. It also goes back to a fighter having a great round, then judging his next round, which is closer than the one that he clearly dominated, and judging the fighter by comparing his performance to the previous round that he had, instead of comparing his work in that round against his opponent's work.
Yeah. I mean, I have grave issues. I've had grave reservations regarding the scoring criteria. I've talked about it a number of times. Maybe I've got to now submit my recommendations to the sanctioning bodies, because I think what my propositions make more sense in terms of defense, but technical aspects like that, it would then bring into question on the abilities of these people to actually review fights in that sort of context. It's just too convoluted for them. boxing is specifically entertainment, although as a sport, I've always tended to looked at modern day boxing the way erroneous governments now mismanage the economy. You know, there is sound economic theory, but I kind of look at it the way, you know, like, for example, governments seem to think that if they increase taxation, they will receive greater monies in tax receipts. But if you really analyze it, the opposite works out. When governments around the world have actually lowered tax, they actually collect more in tax receipts. The
Exactly.
same way in boxing, the sanctioning bodies have decided to dilute the organization to try and increase their own market share and profit by increasing divisions to 17 and then so many, and then splintering championships as well into 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4. They feel that that'll increase, you know, market share for them, given that there's obviously more sanctioning bodies as well now. But if you look at the overall effect, what has happened is that boxing has actually gone in a different direction. It's lost not only its core base, but the numbers and the figures. It's been declining rapidly in the United States for the reason is that it cannot attract casual fans, because casual fans do not really understand what is going on. The first thing a new fan, when they decide to watch boxing upon the recommendations of whether it's their family member or friend, or they take up boxing for the first time at a gym with a view to try and increasing their fitness, the first thing that casual fans do is they'll look up whatever their own weight division and find out, you know, who's the champion. You know, my niece is 11 years old. I've been teaching her how to fight. You know, she'll ask me, you know, Uncle, who's the champion in at her weight category? And I'm
Good
like,
luck explaining it.
good question. There's actually 4 champions, 4 world champions, and it'll bemuse her. And she's immediately, well, how can you have 4 world champions in one weight category? You know, tremendous question. Not always, not obviously a simple to answer that question. And that's the problem with boxing, is that, you know, casual fans cannot identify, cannot recognize who is the definitive champion in the respective weight categories. So when there's confusion and chaos, and that manifests into the politics and the corruption and the unbelievable amount of corruption, not only within the United States, we know that, but within boxing as a whole. When you sort of consolidate all of these factors, it's a sport that one wish that you could just gut it internally, you know, get rid of all of the sanctioning bodies, even try and reduce the weight categories, get them down. 17 is far too much, in my opinion. You certainly don't need 4 champions, but you can understand with politics, and if there's injuries, that you do need interim belts here and there. But it's not, for me, the remedial action is not difficult to implement, but it's impossible to bring into force because it's a protection racket. And look at some of the greatest promoters like Bob Arum. You know, Bob Arum was brought in by the government as a special prosecutor to try and eliminate corruption in boxing. But he's actually taken over the rackets, introduced legislation to try and remediate the power of Don King so he can take over the rackets. It reminds me of that film with it reminds me of that film with Captain Dudley, the police captain who it takes over the rackets of the organized crime family. It's got a brilliant film with Kim Basinger in it, and the dude who starred in that Memento film, the Australian who used to be in Neighbours, and
Christian Bale.
Russell Crowe. A
Oh,
brilliant film, but that Captain Dudley, whoever can't remember the name of the actor who plays the part, he takes over the rackets, and that's exactly what Bob Arum has done in boxing as well. He's become that, that sort of figure. He's just crossed those lines, and he's that sort of special prosecutor, that sort of mentality, that sort of those ethical codes that he should have, those virtues that he should have brought in. Just we've seen what he's done over and over the years, and we saw that recently with Vasily, whatever. It's about business continuity. It's about Top Rank to continue. You've only got to look at the way he structured his company in Las Vegas and understand the way taxation works, and look at where his holdings companies are for an incorporated company. He understands finance and money laundering and fraud very well. And if I had the time, I'd go into another video about Top. I'll definitely will. But that's boxing official when we've got these promoters who are just as dirty and not only desecrating the sport in addition to the promoters. Then for me, there's just no future in the sport. It can only implode, and the only way it can implode is these fighters, the exorbitant salaries that they're commanding, and they're not even justifying it. They just want these salaries straight away without even seasoning, fighting any competition, having any domestic fights. They all want to be pay-per-view stars, and we're seeing the younger generation, as we mentioned before, they're now bypassing amateur competitions because they know the sort of monies that are involved within the professional ranks. So they're getting no competition early on, whereas all of the fighters from Eastern Europe and Central America, when was the last time you heard about an American having 300 odd amateur fights or here? But pretty much every fighter from Russia, Uzbekistan, the Ukraine, even if they're not top tier, but even if they're mid-level, they're all having significant number of, if they've not gone to the Olympics, but they've had, like Dmitry Bivol, he's not had top tier victories, but he's had a lot of state and regional competition against good fighters, no doubt about it. So you can see how the skills have been honed and harnessed, and how he's able to challenge guys very early on, like Suleiman Barrera and Joe Smiths, etc. So they've had that competition. But so therefore now these fighters are being used, they're doing the heavy lifting and they're getting screwed over, just like the African American fighters were from the 50s and after 64, after when the legislation was brought in by Lyndon Johnson, when rights and voters' rights were being introduced. So we're seeing that being shifted onto, those sort of eugenics policies being shifted over to now these fighters. They're getting, screwed over left, right, and center. Once they've done all of the heavy lifting, won all the fights, become unified champions, won 3 belts like Vasily, like Sergey Kovalev, for their belts, just literally to be stolen from them by so-called American or American-based fighters. So it's disgusting, the sport, I'm sick of it. Hence why I've almost become a recluse, almost a casual,
Absolutely, man. Couldn't say it any better. For real, you have a new crop of guys, just like you said, doing all the heavy lifting, only to put them against your hope, your future big name, to take it over, the takeover. That's right. But yeah, I have some other interesting points about Estrada versus Gonzalez.
I keep digressing onto different areas. Apologies.
No problem at all. I'm enjoying it, but I'm looking at my notes, And my point is, I'm trying to do it. Me personally, I'm trying to do it as fast as possible, because I know that when I talk, it can take some time, and I know that you need some rest. So that's the only reason why I was going back to the fight. But corruption, anyways. What do you think? What would Wilder think about the wrinkles on Chocolatito's puncher's gloves? Well, man, and what's even worse, I do think that they know it's all BS. I think even a slightly retarded person like Wilder would know what a puncher's glove is. But yeah, it was obvious to me even watching the fight live.
Official.
Yeah.
It would have been magnificent if Roman would have, instead of Caballero, if he would have hired Mark Breland for the rematch.
Yeah. Fuck. Oh yeah. And by the way, yeah, I was listening to the video of our friend Dell, Blue Collar Sports TV. Shout out to him, but I have to disagree with him. I even wrote this in the notes, because yeah, he was saying that he thought people were, how do you say, hypnotized by the zone's commentary, which by his own words was pro Roman Gonzalez. Now, I have the zone subscription, paying only €2. I was watching it, but I wasn't watching the US version, the US commentary. It's nice that they have an option to watch the Spanish commentary, which was not any better. And I only wanted to say that obviously the Spanish version of the transmission of this fight was extremely pro Estrada. So I just wanted to say that it cannot be possible that people scored it, had Roman as a clear winner, most of the people, because of the zone's commentary, if it indeed really was pro Roman, because obviously Mexicans commentating on the zone on the Spanish version were so pro Estrada. So I just wanted to address that as well. And man, good question to me would be, where would you rank, and where would I rank um, Chocolatito and Estrada on our pound for pound list? In my own opinion, I would say Roman. I mean, what I was thinking before the fight, I would say that a win for Roman would be slightly bigger than a win for Estrada, because Estrada was fighting clearly past his prime Roman, while you can argue that Estrada is at the end of his prime. Now both gave a wonderful performances in this fight, both of them. But I
Roman's
would.
position, Roman's position would be elevated because Estrada is the naturally bigger fighter.
Mhm.
Roman is therefore fighting above his natural weight at 115 pounds and has beaten the bigger fighter to become a unified, well, he should have become a unified champion. So, in adherence to our criteria and the coup d'etat's pound for pound rankings, Roman won the fight and therefore
Yeah.
beaten the bigger fighter, the WBC and the Ring Magazine champion. So, therefore, for me, he goes to number one.
Yeah, me too. Because I was about to tell you the way I was seeing this right before the fight. I was telling myself, well, if Roman wins this, I could place him on my number one spot. But if Estrada wins, I could place him somewhere in between number one and number three or four. Because yeah, he's a bigger fighter. He's fighting past his prime Roman, so it would not be such a huge victory as if it would be for Roman. So yeah, I definitely do agree with you. I mean, at least number two, but I would say number one probably.
Yeah, yeah. We'll talk a little bit more about. Maybe we'll do a brief revised or an updated pound for pound top 10 next show.
Sounds
Big
nice.
boxing forthcoming this weekend, some key fights. So we'll try and come back in the post fight, and as a final section, we'll give our updated top 10. Not as extended as obviously the 5 hour show. We'll try and do it in like 10 minutes instead of. So official, I'm going to come back onto this fight as well briefly next time because I still need to do my own stats and rewatch the fight. I've not even seen it a second time. So I just wanted to touch briefly on the undercard, unless you have any additional or conclusion, sort of finishing remarks on the fight.
Yeah, in fact, I do. I have two of them.
Okay.
I'll do it as fast as possible, as quick as possible. Yeah. Okay. So first of all, yeah, expect a full punch count for this fight in between Estrada and Gonzalez very soon, in a couple of days, on this channel. So yeah, I uploaded rounds 1 and 2, but on my own channel, but expect the whole punch count video, an hour and a half long, in a couple of days here on the Coup d'etat of boxing. Now, 2 points that I wanted to make, obviously about the judging. Just to quickly point it out, don't even need to talk too much about it, but look, just like the fighters are learning from the previous generations and are honing their skills, and so they're able to come up with something new and to improve. Just like that, the same way, even fixing fixing fights improves. So we have a couple of fights recently where in the last couple of years we would have a clear winner, and there would be one outrageous scorecard. Now, what I suspect is that an outrageous scorecard is placed intentionally to take all the blame. So even the other scorecard that is scored that has the opponent who didn't really won the fight as a winner, let's say 115, 113, for a fighter who clearly lost the fight, kind of becomes more justifiable by the stands, by the cocksuckers, by the blind fans, So that's one point that I wanted to make. So take a close look at some of these robberies that we had: Canelo, Triple G, now this one, the other ones as well. Keep it in mind. Now, my very last point I would like to make about this fight, I would kind of like to just briefly compare this fight to their first fight. I would say that the difference is, yeah, there were a lot more exchanges. I mean, there was a huge amount of exchanges in the first fight as well. But the difference is, in the first fight, Estrada was using much more of his footwork. He was bouncing around, and doing. His intention in the first fight was in a lot of rounds to keep the distance from Roman, while this was not so pronounced in the rematch. That's one thing that it came to my attention. Now, I was telling you, and clearly Roman was catching him with the overhand right a couple of times while Estrada was pivoting out on his front foot, but not as much as I expected for the simple reason that Estrada fought a lot more than I expected. Now, but the way that I figured out Roman was landing his straight and overhand rights a lot of times in this rematch was well, I would like to say that a lot of things that you and myself that we said in our fight breakdown in the two shows before the fight happened and came out to be true. And so one of them was I was showing you a video clip of Quadras uh, manipulating Estrada's guard by hooking off the jab and moving to the left or Estrada's right. Now this was kind of unexpected because we was not really seeing it in the first fight. Like I told you, in the first fight, Roman was mainly catching him with the overhand right while Estrada was pivoting out on his front foot. But this time he was doing the thing that Quadras was doing, only that he was throwing one-twos while Quadras was hooking off the jab. And just take a look at this thumbnail of this video. You see Estrada's guard, and I was telling you that both of them, Estrada and Chocolatito, they can have their pairing rear hand manipulated because they both like to parry punches with the right hand, just the way Estrada is doing in this very thumbnail. So the way Roman was landing his overhand right on him most of the times would be he would throw a jab while stepping to the left or Estrada's right, and Estrada would then turn his shoulders to make himself a smaller target, kind of like shoulder roll like situation, and would try to parry with his rear hand. But being that Roman was taking that step to the left on his jab, he was putting Estrada's glove in this very position, like you can see on a thumbnail, and was nailing him on his how do you call it, um, above his eyes. I don't know how do you call it, this part on his front, right? The part of the head that is above the eyes.
Forehead.
Forehead, yeah, forehead. Thank you. And if you take a look at the fight, this is how Roman scored a huge amount of the overhand and straight rights on Estrada. That was just something that I want to bring to all of your attention.
Great points. It's one of those fights where time is just irrelevant. There's so much analysis, we can do that. He would even do the fight any justice. There was just so much action, but you've really got to slow it down and look at the intricacies, the beauties, what they tend to do. There's a lot of power chess going on. Tapping, I see Roman tapping Estrada's elbow. There's guard, disruption of guard. There's small feints, small reactions. There's fadeaway punches. There's anticipation punches. Roman doing what he was doing in the first fight, in anticipating where Estrada is going to move to because he was more prone. That's his instinct as his defense to try and sort of move laterally, shift to Roman's left to try and negate Roman's counter, what he was doing, countering with the right hand. Certainly when Estrada was he has that neck of cycling from a from a jab to a lead uppercut to a left hand to the body with very little recoil. It's one of the nicest punches in boxing, that sequence he does. But Gonzalez was aware of that, and he was kind of trying to counter him before Estrada would land the hook to the body to come up with the right hand. When Estrada, because he tends to square up that punch a little bit, so you can see the left hook coming. It's just instincts of a veteran fighter who knows his opponent, has studied him, has fought him. Great action. No doubt that a rubber match or whenever it happens, if the WBC can intervene and demand an immediate rematch, that would be, for me, warranted, justified, and it would be so much better than a third Sarisakat fight. You know, I'm not really interested in that.
Yeah, same for me. Sorry for interrupting. Just
Yeah.
quickly. Yeah, in fact, it would be the same thing that I did with Roman with the first Sorongwisa fight. The third fight is not really deserved. I mean, being that we've been given a fantastic action fight, why not see it? It would be lovely. But at the same time, from the standpoint that Roman clearly won this fight, the third fight, a rubber match, is not really needed in that sense. But yeah, at least judging from what our friend B-Space commented on one of the Discord groups, I don't know how true is it, but he said that Roman, it looks to be that he's having a meeting with WBC officials very soon, in just a few days, and that he will be indeed pushing for a rubber match, for an immediate rematch.
What better way is there to feed El Gallo to Rey Martinez with yet another career shortening fight?
Yeah, yeah.
No doubt Eddie Hearn would. We'll see what the Sarisakat, how the WBC are going to manage, coordinate what takes precedence, whether a mandatory position or some sort of an injustice and an immediate rematch. I'm not sure. It's kind of frustrating to try and predict, you know, the decision-making process of these corrupt sanctioning bodies or whatever it is. There'll be sufficient demand and outrage, and no doubt about it. It will sell, given not only how good this fight was, but if the general opinion from most people, if it's kind of like maybe a 75-25, it might even be 60-40. I don't know. I'm not on social media, but I kind of sense that most of the people who scored the fight favored Gonzalez. So from that point, some sort of, you know, remediation or justice, no doubt there would be sufficient demand for a third fight, even if there is a degradation of both fighters. But both of them suffered punishment in the fight, no doubt about it. So I don't think it's going to affect one fighter more than the other. Good thing with Roman, he's still hungry for fights. There's no sense of retirement there, which is good to see. Heartbroken, no doubt about it. You know, bitterly heartbroken. That is what caused the emotion. It wasn't anything else. He was heartbroken. He was disappointed. The so-called system had let him down. You know, he felt betrayed, no doubt about it. But yeah, I've got nothing further to add on the fight. Not until I rewatch it.
Okay, so let's then go to the undercard.
Yeah, I'll go on to it briefly for two reasons. The co-main event, the women's welterweight undisputed championship rematch, a fight that was so derisory that it clearly had no business being on a fight of this sort of, overriding quality. A poor, sort of cumbersome fight in which Cecilia Brækhus once again had some sort of a mental suicide, didn't implement the adjustments that she made in the first fight, a little bit too consumed by emotion, and maybe she just looked at McCaskill's very low knockout ratio and thought she could knock her out. And what the hell has happened to Abel Sanchez? No coherent, wise instructions to tell a fighter, look, you're continuously getting nailed with a fighter who's just waiting for that overhand right, and you just keep walking into that punch. I didn't hear any instructions. What the fuck is this guy even doing in boxing still?
Great question.
I couldn't believe. And Cecilia, she did realize at some points how to fight against somebody like that. She's comprehensively the better boxer. McCaskill is just a crude banger. But that was a poor quality fight. But the scorecards, once again, the margin of victory for McCaskill, 10-round fight, 10 2-minute rounds, it was atrocious. I think the judges had it almost like 8 rounds to 2, may even be 9 to 1. It was I don't even recall, but it was clearly didn't reflect the fight. Cecilia definitely won rounds. I don't think she won the fight, but she may have won around 4 rounds, but she kept getting nailed. She was definitely buzzed up at certain early on, some of the middle stages, sustained a little bit of a recovery mid to late rounds, but didn't realize how to use those feints, tried to create the angle to try and set the bait for that right hand, then slip it, pivot off to the left, and just do what she was doing in rounds 6, 7, 8 in the first fight. But it kind of surprised me. But that's the premature state of women's boxing at the moment. There's no real evolution. I only see Senicia Estrada as the best women's fighter, but also on the undercard we had the debut of Hiroto Kyoguchi, junior flyweight 108-pound champion, fighting up against Vega, who previously challenged, who also fought at minimum weight before, unsuccessfully challenged for a world title back then, but moved up in weight as well. And Kyoguchi's had quite a turbulent period with COVID and a long layoff out the ring, and now making his debut for Matchroom. I think he's being managed by the Reynosos, some sort of a tri-party agreement with Eddie and the Reynosos. And what the hell was he doing? I couldn't believe what I was seeing. As I was saying to official, you can't fight a leprechaun on the inside. Somebody who's 4'9", low center of gravity. There's not a lot of real estate to target, and you're the taller fighter. You're trying to punch downwards, so you're not maximizing your power. You got to try and bend, but even still, Vega was a very accomplished fighter, knows how to fight on the inside. Great counter puncher, good body puncher, and Kyoguchi was certainly getting pieced up, fighting on the inside. Not really a fight you want when you're fighting for the first time in a different country on a card and you've had a long layoff. That's a tough, stylistic, bit of a nightmare matchup. Started maintaining distance and range a little bit, trying to set some traps, trying to keep the fight a little bit long, trying to use his jab. So he was you could see he was kind of figuring out what to do. But we saw what happened at the end of, Vega, hitting Kyoguchi's, rock hard samurai head. And he was fortunate when he turned around. Kyoguchi sort of flew in with that Sega Tiger uppercut, almost took his head off. luckily the referee jumped in because he was clearly not protecting himself. He was obviously in a crazy amount of pain, broken his third metacarpal, turned his back. Kyoguchi thought, here we go, man, let me pull out the samurai sword and take his head off. But yeah, pity, Kyoguchi was starting to make a little bit of adjustments, maybe trying to figure them out a little bit. So it would have been interesting to see what would have happened for the remainder. But Vega definitely gave a good account of himself. Was trying to become the smallest world champion in history as well. At sort of 4'9", 4'9.5". Good little fighter, not a bad little scrap, but Hiroto. I think it was Hiroto's mandatory. I think fighter from Thailand. That fight was put on the back burner as well. So very difficult preparation, stylistically very difficult fight as well. So we'll give Hiroto a pass on that one. But yeah, let him try and get into a routine. Get him 2-3 fights. Is that a frustrating period after, Hecky Butler fight where he had a lot of steam, a lot of momentum. So they need to build him up again, get him match fit, get him seasoned. And then I'm sure some point in the future, if he gets past this mandatory, I'm sure they're looking at a unification with Felix Alvarado.
Yeah, this would be wonderful. Now, look about that fight in between Vega and Hiro. Sorry, do you have anything else to say on the fight?
No. Over to you, my good man.
Okay, so yeah, that fight, look, even right before the fight, I think I was tweeting to Doug Fisher on Twitter, who was tweeting about the fight that was about to start. And right before the fight, I wrote him something along the lines of, man, it just sucks that Hiroto Kyoguchi is fighting such a short guy on his debut in America, because the thing is, Hiroto Kyoguchi, he loves to work on the inside, but against the fighters who are similar to his height, or even taller fighters, not necessarily, not always taller, but even when he's fighting smaller fighters, they're not as tiny, as short as Vega was. So I knew in advance that there was a huge risk of him not looking very good, and plus on top of that, his preparation for this fight being questionable due to COVID that he suffered. I knew that it risks not to look good for him, but the fight itself, it was looking extremely exciting. I was really enjoying it. The problem was that anticlimactic finish, because if it went on, I believe it would be a very good fight. Now, for sure, the first 2-3 rounds, he was really having a trouble, having to adjust to a much shorter, explosive fighter, and nobody likes to fight them. So yeah, it was looking bad for him, and he was getting nailed with some great excuse me, please, with some great punches. But I felt like from the third round on, he kind of started catching his timing. He started blocking his punches on the inside. Yeah, he was not going all out, throwing the explosive combos, the same ones that Vega was throwing at him. But he started adjusting and doing a much better job on the inside while throwing less punches. At least that's what I got watching it live. I haven't rewatched the fight yet, so I may be wrong about it, but that's what I think I was seeing.
Yeah. I think one of the coup d'etat of boxing's best prospects, Jesse Bam Rodriguez, he would have been watching that fight and thought, if I'd been in the ring with Hiroto, he would have been sushi for me.
Yeah, indeed.
And I think
Yeah,
Robert Garcia was talking about how they were negotiating with Eddie Hearn for actually Rodriguez to fight Kiyoguchi, as we talked about ages ago. But it's hard to try and convene what exactly happened. They said they were offered it, or Mr. Honda was offered it, and then they declined at the last minute. I'm not sure, but Jesse was more than willing to step in, even as the substitute, and fight for his maiden world championship. But that's just a matter of time. The talent he possesses, that'll actually be a fantastic fight. But if it happens a little bit down the line, with Hiroto personally, I think that'll be an amazing fight. Once we see a seasoned, fully fit, healthy Hiroto, not sure if where he's going to reside, or whether it's going to be the United States or whatever. Gotta try and figure out what his logistics are. But once he's settled in, he feels at home. He's going to try and have to learn another language, so it's very difficult for those who have not lived in any other countries. I can tell you, I've lived in over 6 countries. It's very, very, very difficult having to learn. Official will tell you himself. He's multilingual now. He probably can have a very fluent conversation with Hiroto in Japanese now. So
not yet. No.
it's difficult, tough, trying to acclimate. So we'll give him the benefit of the doubt. So hopefully down the line, that fight can happen. Even if it happens before an Alvarado unification, I wouldn't mind that. But Bam Rodriguez will be world champion. No doubt about that for us.
Exactly, just like you said, it's just a matter of time, nothing else. Nothing else than that. Man, it would be a fantastic fight. But to be honest, yeah, I never knew about that Garcia was offering that fight to Hiroto. But however, yeah, being with all the things that we just mentioned about Hiroto and his preparation and him not fighting for a while, I totally give him a pass, and I would prefer him to be better prepared for such a fight. Although, yeah, Bam Rodriguez is not that experience,
Yeah,
but Hiroto should get more time to prepare for that fight. That's a real fight.
absolutely. Bam Rodriguez is definitely not the opponent you want to face after 16 months out the ring and having recovered from a potentially fatal illness as well. No.
Exactly.
So whatever the fate had convened, probably better that Rodriguez, because Hiroto probably would have been knocked out. I
Yeah,
don't think
yeah.
the fight would have gone. Probably would have been mid to late stoppage. I'm not sure, but something
Unless
along those
unless Jesse Rodriguez hurts his hands too.
Yeah, yeah. Hiroto's entire head is like an egg white.
Yeah, wait. Fucking yeah. Yeah.
You want an autopsy? Is that calcium bone, or is that some sort of
Yeah.
alloy
Autopsy.
compound?
Well, oh, but yeah, to go back to the co-main event.
Yeah.
Look, I have to say one thing because I never addressed this specifically, but I feel like I never really talked about. People know that I dislike many things about the female boxing, women boxing, but I want to explain it.
Yeah.
It's just from a standpoint of a boxing fan who wants to see the skills of the highest order. And yeah, that fight in that sense clearly underperformed, and I was not satisfied. And it was frustrating because you can see what's the Norwegian girl's name? Oh, I forgot it.
Cecilia
Cecilia, yeah, Breakfast.
Brackhouse. Yeah.
Yeah, she clearly has some talent, but she was getting hit all over and over with the overhand right, carrying that lead hand low. It was frustrating, and you was so spot on with the scorecards because I think I gave Cecilia 5 rounds. Now, yeah, as a boxing fan who's there to see the skills of the highest order, I was frustrated, and that's why I'm very often frustrated with the women boxing. But on the other hand, uh, look, you know that just like you, me myself, I love to analyze boxing, to and you know that it would be my dream to do a trainer's job or something like that, something that has to do with boxing and learning, teaching, etc. Whether it's doesn't matter if it's being a boxing coach or a matchmaker, but as I'm telling myself, if I was a boxing coach, I would welcome anyone who loves the sport to do it, you know. So same goes for the females. I would never hate on them. In fact, it would be a challenge, and it would be very interesting to get a female boxer and to try to improve her as much as possible, especially because I feel like the women's boxing, it's they could make such a difference in between them and their opponents, just by learning the skills, because it feels like they don't have the same punching power nowhere near as the male boxers. So just improving the technique and the skills alone and the strategy, making them think more in the ring than most of them currently do, would do wonders for a lot of them. And there are perhaps some boxers that I watched once or twice, and that I enjoy, and like you said, Senissa Estrada, right? Her, and also the big girl that's working with Fury, Savannah Marshall. I saw that she has some real skills. Okay, she's too huge for her opponents, at least from her last fight. I think I saw that in the last fight she was much bigger than the opponent, and that's something that I always disliked in boxing. But man, even Savannah Marshall, she has some real skills. Probably I don't know if it's not like that I'm watching women boxing for now, but yeah, I liked what I saw from her
Yeah.
on that
I
card.
believe I believe Senicia Estrada, who for me is the best female boxer in boxing, is actually moving down in weight for a world championship. I think she's moving down to 105 pounds this weekend. So that'll definitely be, because she's an explosive puncher who's very heavy handed.
Sorry for
She won Francisco Estrada's sister.
Oh, because I was guessing, man, she has the same name as Estrada, so she's his
Maybe,
sister.
I don't know.
Oh,
I'm not sure, but I think she may be.
that's what I was asking myself. And sorry for cutting you off, but
Yeah.
that was just what I was about to say. I saw just that only one fight that she got criticized for being put in the ring with. With an opponent who was nowhere near her league,
Yeah.
but so the explosiveness. I said I never saw a woman boxer throwing combos that tight and that explosive. So that
Yeah,
was so
man.
lovely to see, and I want to see Sinisa Estrada. Her
And
combos.
she's as sexy as a motherfucker. Ain't that right, Beat Space?
Oh, I think so. I think so. I think I saw her images, and I would say even her combos are more compact than Francisco Estrada's combos.
I
Yeah.
wanna,
So,
I wouldn't
but
mind shortening my combos on her, man. Definitely.
yeah. But going back to Cecilia Brækhus versus her opponent, Mekaskel or whatever,
Yeah.
watching that fight, being that I was frustrated with the way that fight was looking to me, I I felt so bad the need to switch and go watch the Benavides fight, but I was afraid of missing missing the main event because women boxing it's around 2 minute rounds, so I was afraid of missing it. Yeah,
I
that's
haven't
that.
seen that fight. Not even seen any highlights. If you want to talk about that briefly,
Yeah,
by all
yeah.
means.
Look, in fact, I've never really watched the entire fights of Benavides, or I cannot remember watching them. Certainly not analyzing them. Well, this fight, I caught it a day after. It was, look, he's nice when he throws his combos. I even like his counter punching. Man, his counter punching is so lovely. Um, his opponent was limited, but he was doing his best. And the thing is, he was getting Benavides was getting nailed by a lot of jabs, trying to pull back, use his height, but getting hit with a lot of straight punches and jabs to the chest and upstairs. But still, yeah, whenever Benavides lets his hands go, it's really nice to see. He punches really hard. I mean, not a destructive puncher, but I love the way he punches. He's putting everything in his punches when he throws his combos. So I wasn't really analyzing that fight in depth, but
Oh,
it makes
he's a bad muchacho. Yeah, no doubt
oh
about it.
yeah. So, but I never followed him for now. I knew that he was a good fighter, but never really. I mean, you know me. Uh, I'm trying. I'm doing my best when watching fights. So that's why I don't have enough time to watch and follow all the fighters. So
Mhm.
he was one of them that I was not really following, but I will from now on.
Official with that height and reach, the power, the speed, and the precision of that jab. Do you really think Canelo, with his Aladdin curly toe sandals, can walk him down, slip the jab, get on the inside, and target the body with that sort of, with the discrepancies in height and reach? If it was a legitimate fight, the sort of negative, the inertia of his footwork, no way at all. I don't see it. I think Benavides would just be snipering, piecing him up at that sort of range.
Well, you know what? I want to be careful. You know me. You know that I don't like to talk about the fights before doing my film study. But yeah, man, Benavides looks like he would give Canelo hell, especially with those combos. And I see no reason for Canelo to I, I don't see no reason for Benavides to be given a fair fight against Canelo if much lesser fighters than him like like Smith like Yildirim were not given that opportunity. They probably assigned a clause to keep their mouth shut and to come in the ring drained as fuck. So
Yeah.
no reason for Benavides, who's especially extremely tall and is certainly having a hard time cutting down to
Yeah.
168. So yeah, I cannot see Benavides being given a fair shake against Canelo. He's gonna get ace-sided the fuck out of him. So,
I love the
yeah,
way he talks when he just dismisses Canelo and all of the others. He just say, "I'll fuck him up right now."
yeah, a fighter's fighter, a fighter's fighter.
Yeah.
That's it. But by the way, it looks like while Charlo he's saying that he he wants to fight him, but we know that these guys do much more talk than walk. So I don't know how true is it. It would be wonderful if they make that fight in between Benavides and Charlo, but
I'd love to see that fight in Bangkok, Thailand.
Benavides will face into Bangkok.
In the beauty salon, just fight in there.
And Charlo gets his purse stolen in the process by the talented crannies.
Yeah, and gets his beautiful white pearly teeth knocked out as well.
Oh man, yeah, probably.
Nah, the same way Danny Garcia is going to go up to 154 and conquer that division. And Jamal Charlo at 168. No chance. This guy just specializes in beating up fighters coming from a defeat and then proclaiming to be a pound for pound great. Why don't you try and fight a legitimate in the prime seasoned fighter coming off a sustained winning record, and then we'll see how good you are. Tom Loeffler talks about how many offers that Golovkin had sent to Jamal Charlo, who clearly didn't want to entertain any fight. Declined three or four offers, legitimate offers. So these fighters can talk about, and they can lie and procrastinate, talk about how they were mandatory for a certain number of years, why they were denied a fight, only because they declined the fight or they had no business in trying to get in the ring. So it is what it is. He can remain in that weak ass 160-pound division fighting nobody. Canelo's no longer there, so we'll just have to wait for one of the Uzbek fighters to turn over pro after the Japanese Olympics. So forget about that. And with Canelo and David Benavides, there's a reason why Canelo never called out Benavides whilst he was the WBC champion, but soon as he loses his belt, he's on the phone with Suleiman straight away and trying to get a fight for the vacant belt with Avni Yildirim or fight for the vacant belt. And then when DAZN via Golden Boy declined the fight first time, Canelo invokes a lawsuit to try and extricate himself from the contract. So Canelo can talk whatever he wants, but he's one of the biggest pussies in boxing. So fuck that.
Of course, fuck him, bitch. Yeah, I mean, like the other people are saying, his whole career he's been avoiding fighters, doing Riddick Bowe on that WBC belt, and now he's the one talking about there should be only one weight division, which is indeed true. But I mean, Canelo, you're talking about that just now, and you're talking about willing to unify because you want to be a real champion, to become the undisputed. I mean, fuck off, Canelo.
Yeah, he's just a master of recycling belts. It's amazing how belts all of a sudden matter to him now, especially when the division is as weak as it is. But beforehand, he's more than happy to vacate the WBC 160-pound belt, WBO 154-pound belt. Soon as a reasonable challenge becomes his mandatory, he vacates and moves up. Done that his whole career. You can just go back to Matthew Hatton, a 147-pound fighter. ranked at what 10th in the rankings, but he fights for the championship at 154. Pull him up. He's done it his entire career. So we've already done a brilliant, one of the best videos on Canelo's bitch ass tactics throughout his professional career. Just a fugazi, a fraud. Unbelievably talented, skillful fighter. He's got all of the ability, but the baton, the blueprint to how to maximize revenue for the least amount of effort, but manipulating all of the odds. The baton was passed to him as a euphemism for when Floyd defeated him, but at the same time, that blueprint was transferred to him for Canelo to sort of advocate and implement to a T, which is doing now, and credit to him.
Yeah, I just want to add something quickly. Oh, corruption. It's corruption. It says your device is not connected. So please jump out and jump back in. I don't know if you hear me, corruption. Please jump out and jump back in. It says your device is not connected. Oh damn. Yeah, but it just as I was about to say. I mean, corruption and myself, we spoke about this privately on Discord. But yeah, I want to make it official on the coup d'etat of boxing. I mean, very recently, Kevin Aioli was tweeting about speaking with Canelo's team and them saying that they basically approached Beterbiev before approaching Kovalev for a fight at 175. Which is a complete nonsense. I mean, this ballless guy always trying to fight easiest fight possible, waiting on Triple G to get old. Yeah, but you're going to jump in and ask to fight a much bigger beast in Beterbiev. Yeah, sure. I mean, and just as Kevin Aioli said that on Twitter, Artur Beterbiev answered him and told that it's a complete lie, that it's a nonsense, that he was never approached by Canelo and his team, and that in fact he's more than willing to fight him, and that he was urging Canelo and his team to contact him. Complete. It's just funny. And on top of that, I heard a day or two ago that he was trying to, Beterbiev, he was saying that he's available for the next fight if Canelo doesn't have a new opponent yet. He's willing to fight him. Fuck, it's fucking crazy. But it just shows you further what of a bitch Canelo is, and many other fighters following his footsteps. I mean, we at the coup d'etat of boxing, we are not against that. Go gain as much money as possible. We all want you nothing but the best, but don't take us for fools. Corruption, welcome back in.
Yeah, looks like our anti-battery missile defense is being breached once again.
Damn sure looks that way.
Yeah, we're gonna have to reinforce that before we plan our siege of Bavaria next year.
Something tells me it's the Mexican cartel trying to
Yeah.
So, anyways, what was you about to say? Because I just told them about the Beterbiev fiasco. Canelo pretending that he was
Yeah.
looking to fight Beterbiev, in fact, and the only reason that he fought Kovalev is because Beterbiev and his team declined the offer, telling Canelo that they have some other fight in mind.
Yeah, kind of reminds me of the whole Devin Haney and Vasily and Linares situation when you're
Oh,
already
and
locked into a contract and then you try and send some sort of superficial offer to Vasily, which you know is not, there's no statutory, it's not an executed contract in any way possible, so it's not going to be a legitimate deal. It's just designed to pacify any critics, etc., because you're under so much criticism for fighting nobodies. The tactics that goes in boxing.
fucking unbelievable, yeah. And as you're mentioning that shit, yeah, I guess you guys all know, but basically Devin Haney just made a deal with Linares and his team to fight them. And so Linares signed the fight, and then after Linares signing the fight, Bill Haney contacted Klimas, asking him if Loma is willing and ready to fight them. So Loma's team had to contact Linares' team, only to find out that Linares already signed a fight against Haney. And so, yeah, it just shows you what a bunch of cloud chasers the Fag 4 are.
Yeah, they're kind of using that old PBC strategy, what they were doing before. You see it all the time, using somebody's name, like a Manny Pacquiao's name. But with Teofimo Lopez, the strategy, you fight specifically on Vasily's card because he's got no profile, a little bit of an amateur profile. So people know there's a little bit of buzz around him, so you just get him on his undercard. You give him nothing but highlight, knockout real victories, increases his profile. He starts trash talking about how he's been mirroring Vasily's career, how he's his target. So you can kind of prognosticate what's going to happen. They're preparing Vasily for him. Top Rank is looking at that business continuity plan, a changing of the guard, and the takeover, the illegal takeover, or the unjustified takeover, and but with Devin Haney, as I've talked about before, I think the winning the belt when you're not a seasoned fighter is like an albatross around his neck. Talented fighter, but clearly didn't need to be a champion at such a premature stage of his career, because we talked about how hardcore boxing fans, and their argument is very valid. Same with Joshua. With Joshua in the IBF, once you become a world champion, you're no longer a prospect. It's no longer about trying to improve your boxing skills or preparing, all of that nonsensical talk we even heard with Joshua after the Charles Martin fight. You're no longer a prospect. But that's the problem with boxing. Too many titles, easy to win championships, and this is the year of the prospect world champion. That's what this decade is all about. And you have that with Haney. Unfortunately, the WBC, they never sanctioned or they never called the fight. So Vasily could not have ducked him. So Bill Haney can talk whatever about that. Vasily was more than happy to put down his regular in favor of the franchise to try and circumvent these challenges, which is one of the most ridiculous. How can what sort of veracity is on that on a competitor like Vasily, what he's done his entire career? This guy has not even had a professional fight in his home country of the Ukraine, and you talk about him ducking challenges. Man, I don't know, official, as I said, Haney, very good, talented fighter. But what the hell is he even doing at a lightweight? You know, a 5'9" 160-pound fighter. What he rehydrates to? Um, you're just going to look at size, youth. You know, look at that sort of attritional skills to try and fight somebody like Vasily, overpower him with strength and with speed. Given that maybe Vasily's body and the elasticity in his body is not there, so they're just gonna. It's going to be youth eventually, which is going to take its toll. But I hope Vasily says, F you to the entire lightweight division who are trying to freeze him out. He's not going to get another fight. We know that. Bob Arum clearly doesn't want him the champion there. Bob Arum wants to definitely prepare Vasily for Shakur Stevenson. So if Vasily can move down and fight Oscar Valdez for the WBC 130-pound world championship, because there's clearly history between the two fighters, having fought twice in the amateurs. Vasily absolutely schooling him, and Valdez has talked about 2-3 years ago, talking about how he definitely wants to fight Vasily, feels he's a much better fighter because he was a very young dual Olympian. So Valdez, is a proper fighter. I have a lot of respect for him. I've talked about it for a number of years, and that's a fantastic fight. Vasily would go down to a weight division where his body is more accustomed to. It's a natural sort of size for him. He's a very, very small sort of lightweight fighter. He's a better at a 126, 130. That's his natural weight. You've only got to look at his rehydration weights as a kind of a barometer to know what is his natural sort of baseline weight. They're very similar stature, him and Oscar Valdez. Valdez is definitely a good fighter, good power. So that's a great fight on the top rank card. Promotional deal. There's no complications, you'd think. Fight would probably be in the United States, could even be in Mexico. I don't think Vasily might fighting. I think Valdez would have no issues. So that's a great fight. So I would say to Vasily, if that is more of a tangible, logical fight, a fight that you can make, and it's a great fight against an undefeated two-weight world champion who's just beaten the so-called boogeyman of the division, go for it.
Indeed, spot on. I could not say it any better, bro. Yeah, look, Haney, I mean, just like you said, he got the title, that email title, the title emailed to him so very soon in his career, way too early. So his very last fight against the corpses of Gamboa that he found at some archaeological site and took it. But in the process, they were not able to find Gamboa's athleticism, which was the very thing that used to make Gamboa such a great little fighter.
Yeah.
So
VADA did a carbon testing on Gamboa and realized that his skull came from the Mesopotamian era.
His athleticism was sacrificed to the Egyptian gods a very long time ago. so that was realistically a developmental fight, but in fact it was a title fight for Haney, but in reality something that should be a developmental fight. And the way he fought in that fight, very carefully, very basically, I mean, it was clear that he's still a work in process, because he was fighting extremely carefully, without any real confidence, just something that you would expect from a developing fighter. And so yeah, it tells you all. Definitely not the way that fight looked. It was not a title fight. a title fight would be facing someone like Loma.
Yeah, and Jorge Linares never had a good chin.
Yeah.
Good, tremendous, skillful, lovely combination sort of fight.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Linares, man. If one fighter had a good chin, if well, Linares, he would be amazing because he's so lovely to watch. His timing is great. He's so fluid, so fucking fluid, so wonderful to watch. But man, um, that chin is very questionable. Oh, corruption again. You're having problems with your devices. I mean, in reality, it's the coup d'état of boxing who's having problems with their nemesis. Right now, it's Bill Haney trying to disrupt our streaming. Yeah, so jump back in, bro. And by the way, right after corruption, right after the fight, after the show, I will have to just tell you something crazy quickly. Yeah, Devin Haney. I mean, fuck him with those bitch moves. I mean, I don't want to go on. I already spit enough of venom on my solo channel the last night because I was so frustrated, and like I told you, it was so out of my character to attack a fighter that way. I mean, the whole Fag 4, but I had to do it because let's not pretend that that it's all good and that these are the Fab 4. Yeah, corruption, you're back in. Bill Haney cannot disrupt our stream.
It's not only Bill Haney or the Sicario or the Zone. It's YouTube. I've spoken to you about it before. I used to have a back in 2008 is when I first started on YouTube, and I had a channel devoted to sort of economics and geopolitics that I was forced to take down as well. I started talking about sort of the corruption that was involved in leading to the economic and financial crisis of 2008. Went into detail, sort of breaking them down and speaking about certain other aspects of history and eugenics, etc. And that was one of the prototypal platforms and sort of sites. So YouTube have been on my case, and some of my other ventures that Official knows about. I've been hit with more copyright strikes than I believe most people in boxing put together, and I've taken some of the biggest companies and had them overturned, but they've been on YouTube have been on me for well over a decade, put it that way.
Fucking crazy. I mean, yeah, by the way, what else is there to say? Maybe mention some of the fights that are about to happen.
Yeah.
Or...
Well, obviously we got some really interesting fights this weekend.
Indeed.
We got the return of Artur Beterbiev, unified champion, taking place in Russia. Don't know when that is going to be. Whether is it tonight or tomorrow? Tomorrow, I presume is tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
We got a fantastic fight on. I think it's going to be on the Zone. I'm not sure what Maurice Hooker's situation is, but he declined to fight with Regis Prograis at 140 pounds. A lot of people were angry about that, but he's kind of redeemed himself, given that feels that he's a welterweight, so he's challenging one of the best. He's not even no longer a prospect anymore, but he's a contender in Virgil Ortiz Jr. Tremendous fighter at welterweight. You can also sort of fight at 140. Just a beautiful young fighter. Was on one of my prospects lists last year. So somebody I identified even before. at a very early stage that he was a real talent. So that's a fantastic fight. And Virgil doing it the right way, fighting, real good competition. And if he prevails in this fight, then I believe he becomes Terence Crawford's mandatory. So we got Manny Pacquiao one side, Spence on the other, and now Virgil Ortiz, and now even Sean Porter as another mandatory or whatever else. I don't know. Will he become his? I'm not sure who's going to be his. Porter still could be his mandatory, but I'm sure Virgil Ortiz will be somewhere in close contention as well. So it kind of suffocates the same way the United States are kind of suffocating China now with all of their clockwork naval bases in Guam and South Korea and India and elsewhere. All of the other fighters are doing it to Terence Crawford as well, suffocating him all around. So, he's going to do something soon.
Exactly. And by the way, I'm not really following well. We already talked about the belts earlier. So I'm seeing that this is for a vacant WBO belt. Now, the thing is, there was a waiting. There was a waiting earlier a couple of hours ago, and I got on Twitter that Virgil came out 1.5 pounds over the limit at first try. But then it was reported that, when it was announced that he's 1.5 pounds above the weight limit, I saw someone on Twitter saying that basically he was trying to avoid becoming Terence Crawford's mandatory. But then it was reported that he made the weight limit at the second try. Yeah, trust me, it's not Virgil Ortiz who will duck Crawford. It may be the other way around, because he's been expressing his intentions of fighting Crawford as soon as possible, and I do believe him. And man, what a character! That's the right way to do it. And judging by what Benavidez is saying, that's also the right way to do it. Hopefully, Benavidez is not saying nonsense. Is not just cloud chasing. And the way he acts, I believe he's not cloud chasing. But I even believe Virgil Ortiz more so. He's not a cloud chasing man. He wants, well, you can just see it by him taking up on Maurice Hooker. It just tells you that he's willing to fight the best and really become a truly great fighter. And what else I wanted to say? Man, I forgot. But
we're going to have to do some film studies on Ortiz. I got some great ideas, but we know that Spence is also very defensively conscious, and I think even more so now given the damage he suffered. And you can clearly see it, as I've talked about before. Every single dental surgeon will not advise a surgery of that sort of complex. How complex that that surgery which Spence was forced to undertake whilst they're still professional athletes. You go and look at the statistics. They're out there. Most of the fighters that have suffered those sort of injuries, where they've lost teeth through an accident or in-ring competition or whatever else through their sport, they always wait until they retire to have surgery. So Spence having it beforehand, and we saw what his reactions was like when the gum shield got knocked out. And he no longer exchanges or trades. He's more bringing up a high guard. So you can clearly see, and Virgil is very good defensively, although he's offensively very, very skilled. Good combination, fast punches, quick twitch. He has it all. But he's also defensively very, very good as well. So he's very competitive against both Spence and Crawford right now for me. But you give him 2-3 fights of that sort of caliber as a Maurice Hooker, he beats both of them, no problem for me. Next year, say the end of next year, without any doubt. I would give him I think they're 50-50 fights right now. But next year, he beats both of them.
I do think so, exactly. Unless there's some fuckery, which would not be surprising. But yeah, real fight, he beats them probably. I mean, his defense is very disciplined. He's such a nice counterpuncher, in fact. And just like you said, look, I was seeing in the fight against Danny Garcia when it comes to Spence, he was having a trouble when Garcia was countering him. Now, okay, Garcia was mostly being able to counter him to the body or with the right hand upstairs, but he was not always able to counter him with the left hand upstairs. But yeah, Spence is a guy who likes to wait on his turn to throw his punches, then lets you throw your own punches, not a natural counter puncher. And so it would definitely be a problem against Virgil.
Yeah. I want to definitely do some fight analysis on Virgil. I want to look at his defense, what he does, and specifically, but that's a great fight. But this weekend, Virgil and Maurice Hooker, for however long it lasts. Hooker's long, actually an underrated counterpuncher. Not was giving Jose Ramirez some problems before Ramirez, stepped up the aggression, fantastic knockout, just obliterated him in just sort of. It was just so swift, almost instantaneous. But it was a good little exciting fight. And also we have from the United Kingdom a guy who may also have replicated Errol Spence with dental surgery by the sound of his recent grime record, Lawrence Okole. It sounded to me like his teeth were locked down when he was. My God, that was some of the most atrocious lyrics I've heard. Stepping up in the ring with Krzysztof Glowacki for the WBO Cruiserweight World Championship. No surprise, Okole is a 4-1 heavy favorite. 6 feet 5-inch octopus. He'll either gonna suffocate you with his arms under the protection of Matchroom and the referee, with a Shane McGuigan has brought some assertiveness, some hand speed, and some punching power.
Or he's going to whisper his lyrics into Glowacki's ear.
That'll be his ring walk music. Good job. There's a lockdown because that crowd would be walking out.
Yeah,
but I don't know. I'm predicting Okole to win the fight. I think he's just by hook or crook he'll win the fight. But there is some power in him. He can knock out cats. I think Shane is trying to remodel him a little bit, get him a little bit more aggressive, fan-friendly. I can see he's trying to really sit down on his punches against the southpaw. Good southpaw. He's got heavy hands as well. But I'm not sure. Glowacki's been out of the ring for a good while now, official.
I was not really following him lately, but yeah. I do.
Typical Matchroom tactic of trying to steal a belt against the fighter. We know Okole fought another Polish fighter when it should have been Glowacki when the fight was rescheduled. So Glowacki didn't fight, from my understanding then. So I don't think he's going to be sufficiently... He's going to have a lot of ring rust, I guess. And with Okole, the ace side fighting at home, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm going to check out Glowacki's box rec.
His last fight, surely it wasn't the Breeders' fight.
I hope not. Hopefully not. Hold on. Yeah, I'm at it. Yeah, the last fight against Brides.
There you go. When was that again?
June of 2019.
June. My God, that's 22 months. Well, 20
Oh,
just short. Yeah, 21 months, something like that.
or 18. No, not 18. 21, 22, something like that. Yeah, you're right. 21, 22 months.
So yeah, three months shy of 2 years. So
Fantastic. Good
yeah,
job, Eddie.
yeah.
So it
Yeah.
means a collie by the Python snag.
Well, there you go. The coup d'etat boxing. You want a little accumulator, people? Go for Lawrence Akole, Sinicia Estrada, Artur Beterbiev, and Virgil Ortiz. There's a little four-way accumulator there for you.
I forgot to place it. Thank you for reminding me.
I would go maybe Virgil by stoppage, Estrada by stoppage, Akole by stoppage, and maybe even Beterbiev by stoppage. That'll give you even better odds. I would try an outright four-way accumulator, but then I would do a little prop bet and go smaller amount, knockout stoppage for all four of them. Maybe
Yeah.
try that. That's what I'm going to do. But I'm going to have to look at Sinicia's opponent. I know she's moving down in weight. 10 2-minute rounds, you never can. Well, a knockout is not. It's sometimes impossible in sort of 2-minute rounds. So I'm going to have to. That may be a Estrada on victory by points or stoppage. But in any way, I think she wins. So maybe go 3-1, 3 knockouts to one outright, rather than points or knockout. Don't spread bet that. But yeah, good weekend of cards, both UK, Russia, and the United States. So it's going to be a killer for us once again in Central European region. So official post-fight show is pretty much extended onto a free-for-all Friday night. Anything goes. Coup d'etat laying it down. Anything more you want to cover? Because my time, unfortunately, has
I would just
demanded by somebody else.
I would just say Davis, Teofimo Haney, and Ryan Garcia are the Fact Four. Thank you for being with us.
Well, there you go. Big thank you to all the coup d'etat foot soldiers for joining us on this post-fight show. Broken it down beautifully, I think. Very well.
I enjoyed it immensely.
Yeah. The best film analysis we've done. We talked about all of the permutations of the fight. Unsurpassed. Not even comparable anywhere else. Just go back and listen to all of the stuff we talked about and pretty much came all into fruition in the fights. So, yeah, I hope everybody was entertained, immersed, and Official and myself will be back hopefully Sunday evening. If we've been able to watch all of the fights, it's a massive strain, but we'll try. We're on a little roll at the moment, 3 shows in quick succession, so we want to come back to some sort of consistency every Sunday night. So we'll try and make a concerted effort to watch the fights, record the fights, the ones we can, and try and rewatch the fights on the Sunday morning when you've got your missus chasing you around with a baseball bat to do something else. But Yeah, I'll suffer a mini me broken hand via baseball bat just to try and make the podcast. So on that note, official.
You have to sacrifice more than Canelo's opponent when making the weight.
Yeah. I'll end up like Joe Pesci in Casino, getting baseball to death and buried in the Nevada desert. That'll be me in the garden at the hand of my missus. But yeah. On that note, sayonara from corruption.
Sayonara.